Sure. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cord Connects. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Moshe Weitzberg, and I am a member of the Cord Board of Directors. I would like to welcome you to today's Cord Connects. Our session today is on choosing an academic career. I would like to introduce our speaker. Dr. Nicholas Kaman, MD FACEP, is a professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine at the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. He is board certified in emergency medicine and a fellow of the American College of Emergency Physicians. He completed his medical degree at the Ohio State University College of Medicine and his residency at Wake Forest University, where he served as chief resident. He served as the president of Clerkship Directors in Emergency Medicine, affectionately known as CDEM, an academy of SAEM, and that was from 2014 to 2015. Currently, Dr. Kaman is the academic program director for the fourth year of medical school at the OSU College of Medicine. Dr. Kaman's clinical interest is in disaster response and emergency preparedness. He serves as one of the medical managers for Ohio Task Force 1, Ohio's FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Team. He has deployed to Hurricane Harvey and more recently Hurricane Dorian. Dr. Kaman and the Ohio State Advanced Computing Center for the Arts and Design received a $2 million AHRQ grant to teach mass casualty triage to first responders in virtual reality. That's pretty cool. You have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. We will open up your mics if you would like to do that. Another option you have is at the beginning, at the bottom of your screen, there's an option that says chat, and you can type your questions there, and I will ask them to our speaker at the end of our presentation. I turn the floor over to Dr. Kaman.
Well, great. Thank you for that. I just came from a shift as well, so apologize for no shirt and tie, but I usually go scrubs anyway, but I really appreciate that introduction. I am excited about the grant that we have. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality would like me to remind everyone that I'm representing myself in this talk and not the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. But I will talk a little bit about our grant. I want to focus more on choosing an academic career, but I think research and grants and things like that are things that come with an academic career. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what it's like to work in academic emergency medicine. And we're going to do that through the lens of my career and my experience. And I want to talk about academic practice versus private practice or community practice, and then talk about ways that medical students, residents, and fellows can start to establish themselves for a career in academic medicine. And I'll talk a little bit about different structures of a career in academic emergency medicine, with the caveat that just about every job is going to be a little bit different. I've had extensive discussions with a lot of my colleagues nationally about what their deal is, how much CME do they get, how many shifts do they work, and these vary tremendously. So I will kind of let you know what my deal is, but know that if you've seen one career in academic medicine, you've seen one career in academic medicine. I mean, really, there's a lot of variability here. So a couple things that I'm going to use as definitions. If I say a job in academic emergency medicine, what I'm referring to is a faculty position within an EM residency training program that helps learners, helps graduate resident learners in EM. And my particular situation is we have a mandatory fourth year clerkship for medical students. We have an emergency medicine residency. We have an EM-IM residency, and we have multiple fellowships. So I'm going to come at this from, about as an academic type department as you can have. When I refer to community or private practice, I'm referring to a job where the emergency physicians see the patients kind of by themselves. There may be learners there, but they're not emergency medicine residents with an affiliated emergency medicine residency. Now, one of the more important things that I certainly need to say is there are every variation in between that exists. There's a lot of different hybrid type specialty experiences out there. So I'll reflect on a little bit of that, but just know that one of the beauties of our specialty, and I tell this to medical students, is when you go into emergency medicine, you get a toolkit that you can take anywhere. And so people are very portable, and they work in very different environments. So, you know, that's kind of the caveat there. So why academics? Emergency physicians who assume leadership roles in day-to-day practice or organized medicine were twice as likely to report high career satisfaction. And other things that gave folks career satisfaction were people who found their job exciting and personally rewarding, if they felt they had job security, if there was fair compensation, if they had involvement with teaching, or there was consulting or political involvement. Now, some of these things exist in community jobs. That's certainly true. But by and large, you know, the leadership roles, teaching, political involvement, a lot of that comes with an academic career. So there's a lot of reasons why you do academics. Most of us do it because we like to educate people. We like to work with residents. We like to work with medical students. One of the things that I enjoy the most is traveling and presenting and lecturing. I mean, that's why, you know, when I was asked to do this talk, for me, it was a no-brainer, because I really like to reflect on my experience. So the travel is really great. The picture that you see was, I play hockey, and we're big hockey fans, and we were at a game in Nashville as a part of a conference that I was at. It wasn't the Cord, I think, that was there in 2017. It was after that. But I wouldn't have had that opportunity to travel with my family. You know, in the hotel, I can you know, get through my work CME funding. So there's a lot of opportunity in academics to really travel nationally, to meet people, and even include your family sometimes. So as far as academics, again, depending on the academic group, there's going to be a lot of differences. And the things that can be different is your pay, your vacation time, the amount of time you have for continuing medical education, the amount of protected time you get, the amount of research time you get. So if I just reflect on my group, I'll tell you that we have a 10-year track for researchers who want to be promoted with promotion and tenure, but we also have clinical tracks. We have a clinical scholar track, we have a clinical educator track, and a clinical excellence track. Everyone at our group starts at 17 8-hour shifts a month. And you get protected time from there. So most of our faculty that are clinical educators, and this includes myself, work 13 shifts a month. And then if you get buy down, the buy down comes from that. So I have a 40% reduction to run the 4th year of medical school. So with that and the grant and some other things, I work 6 or 7 shifts a month. So you can imagine it leaves a lot of time for teaching, educating, teaching shifts, scholarship. And it takes some time to get to that, I will admit, but it does make for a pretty nice work-life balance. So the community, it's a good gig as well. And the majority of the residents that graduate emergency medicine residency programs go into community emergency medicine or private practice emergency medicine. The pay is typically better. And the reason for that is pretty simple. When you have departments that are paying educators to educate and to teach and to have scholarship, in academics, there's a lot more overhead. And with more of a private practice model, it's really an eat what you kill kind of model. The more you work, the more you make. And, you know, there's residents that go out in the world and work 20 or 21 shifts a month and may make, you know, $300,000 to $400,000, you know, per year. but it's just a balance of, if that's what you want, you can go get it in the community. There's a lot of flexibility. So in the community, you may have a monthly group meeting where you talk about how things are functioning in the emergency department, but you don't have all the other meetings that come with administration and the College of Medicine and the residency. Yesterday afternoon, we had our clinical competence committee where we went over each resident. And as far as the flexibility, I put the Angus, Alaska model. One of the residents that I graduated from Wake Forest with was Angus Warren, great guy, consummate outdoorsman. He actually got a job in Alaska, but there were only enough patients for him to see in the summer. So he would work in Alaska for 5 months, and then he would come back to North Carolina and work the rest of the year. Again, one of the beauties of emergency medicine is the idea that we have a toolbox that provides us with the skills that we can work just about anywhere. We're not beholden to a patient population. And so there are a lot of pros to the community, but there are some disadvantages. Some of the studies will say that most EM docs change jobs in their first 3 years. And so you have to ask yourself, why does that happen? Was it something with medical malpractice? Was it something with specialists on call? Was it something with the reputation of the emergency department within the hospital? Did the group turn over? Was there a new group that came in? Those are all things that you have to worry about in the community. So one of the things that I tell the medical students, and I advise most of the medical students that go into emergency medicine here at Ohio State, is that I can't help you make your decision. In fact, I don't get a kickback if you go into emergency medicine, or for the instances of this talk, if you decide on academic medicine, all I can do for you is provide you with the experiences that will help you make up your mind. And so in terms of how you choose an academic career, I think the first thing you need to do is go to a residency program that allows you to have different experiences. And so the picture on your screen is a place called Lexington Medical Center. It's about 40 minutes south of Winston-Salem. It's in between Winston-Salem and Charlotte. And that's the place where I moonlit as a resident. And I worked about 2 shifts a month there. Purely community, purely rural. No learners in the emergency department. The only people seeing patients were the doctors. And that was an opportunity for me to see what that was like. We also went to a neighboring hospital that was a similar model, where us as the rotating resident was really the only learner, and the doctors there would see patients, on their own. So the first thing I would advise you when you make a decision is you need to have the experiences under your belt to help you make the decision wisely. And the way you do that is you find a residency training program that can help you find those experiences. So if you're a medical student, and I like to typically kind of find out who the learners are when I give a talk, but I don't know if you're medical students or residents or fellows, but I don't think it's ever too early to consider an academic career. And one of the things, again, it's hard to give this talk without talking too much about my experience, but it's the one I know the best, so I'll kind of reflect on that. Being at a university that has access to a lot of different things has really helped my experience. So my office here at Ohio State is in the Health Sciences Library. So in terms of, access to journals, access to a librarian who could do a literature search, other educational facilities, the College of Dentistry, the College of Optometry, other health sciences are right in this area. That's been a really big help for me. So that was something, I went to a medical school here that allowed me to access those things. And I think that was helpful. I don't think it's a prerequisite to go into academic medicine from an academic, university kind of standpoint, but it's something that helped me. Another consideration in choosing residency is a 3-year program versus a 4-year program. So a resident completing a 3-year residency will have the advantage of getting started on their career a little bit earlier. I trained at a 3-year program, but I also can tell you that I really enjoyed where I was at, and if there were a broader catalog of fellowships at the time that I was a resident, that I may have considered a fellowship with the advantage of learning more, getting more training, being able to stay in the house that we bought. But the place that I went, you know, and I loved my training. I got excellent training at Wake Forest. Was a 3-year program, you know, so that's kind of the situation I had. I can tell you this, I do know plenty of people that have trained at a 4-year institution, and that may give you a better positioning for an academic career. It certainly gives you better positioning for an academic career at a place that has a 4-year residency. So that's something that you really need to think about when you're applying to residencies is, if I am absolutely committed to an academic career, my best chances for success may be a 4-year program, or maybe a 3+1 model where it's a 3-year program, but a place that has multiple fellowships to choose from. And you know, I consider us kind of a 3+1. We have an ultrasound fellowship, we have an education fellowship, EMS, research, administration. We have access to the PEDS residency, and our tox or PEDS fellowship, and our tox fellowship is offline right now, but we had one for many years. So those are things to think about. So if you're a resident, again, the first thing I would think about is what exposure I can get through residency. I want to choose an academic career. Who can help me make that decision? So I need multiple settings. I want to work in an academic setting. I want to work in a community setting. And I need a mentor who can help me meet people and help introduce me to people that will help me get an academic career. I always advise our residents to talk to alumni. So talk to the people that work across the street in the community, talk to the people that work here, talk to the people that have finished our fellowships and gone out to work either in the community or in academics. And then go to national meetings. I have some slides on that, but I'll let you know, if you go to national meetings like CORD and SAEM, which are, you know, more academically geared meetings, and you like what people are doing, then maybe academic medicine is for you. So how do you start? And when do you start is important. I think the clock really starts on your academic career when you start that job. And so, you know, I remember deciding between different possible academic jobs, and knowing that my wife and I wanted to get back to Ohio. She's from the Akron area and I'm from Cleveland. And so working at Ohio State allowed me a chance to get my clock started on my academic career and start working towards promotion. The disadvantages to that is, when I started here, it was still a pretty significant salary difference between a community job and a job here in academics. So, you know, it takes a little longer to get working on those loans and the things that you want to do. The other disadvantage is there's a lot of other things that you have to do. So, you know, meetings with the College of Medicine, and you're not exposed to working as much in the community to develop your skills, you know, prior to that. I will also say that I've seen a number of people in academic emergency medicine switch to academics from the community. So it's definitely something that you can do. I don't think it happens as much as somebody starting their career in academics and then moving into a job in the community. You know, I think what happens is you start in the community, you know, making $50,000 more, or, you know, even you can make more than that, and you decide that you get used to kind of that level of living, and it's hard to move around. But it's just important to know there's different type of academic careers out there. So the one that I've spoke the most about is an academic teaching hospital that has an EM residency. So, that's primarily what we're talking about. But there's certainly teaching hospitals out there that don't have an EM residency, but they may have their learners come rotate through the emergency department. There are also teaching hospitals out there that want an EM residency, but don't yet have one. And that would give someone an opportunity to help build an emergency department from the ground up. And then there's, teaching hospitals that already have an emergency medicine residency. I was given the advice, I actually looked at a job at a place that was a teaching hospital, but didn't have an EM residency. And I had to really ask myself, would I be happy with people that are, they don't want to follow in your footsteps. They really are kind of doing this rotation as a requirement. It's not their passion. And I really enjoy working with those learners. So for me, this has been absolutely the focus that I wanted to have. So there was a nice EMRA piece, and I used a couple different references when I put this together. But there was one from Dr. Art Kellerman, who is, I believe, at Emory right now, who put a couple of points down for what makes a good emergency physician, and I thought I would share those with you. Full credit to him. Excellent clinical skills. So the people that you work with really are trying to learn our specialty, and I don't think they have as much respect for the folks that aren't as good clinically. And so that takes time. And I think as a junior attending, I probably didn't have as much respect from the learners because there were cases that I hadn't seen as much. And, the seniors were 1 year, I guess less from a PGY standpoint than I was. So getting excellent clinical skills is important. And I think fellowship can give you a year of time to continue to add to that. To be a good academic physician, I think you gotta love teaching. You can be a gifted clinician, but there's gonna be learners always there. And I think one of the biggest things we do is teach. And folks have to wanna make a difference because, as I said, this isn't the road to the big bucks. I think it's the road to career longevity. I think you can make a great living. Some institutions have, put an emphasis on retirement and things like that, but you got to love what you're doing. And the other thing that I just recommend, and this one I added, is having some patience in your career. You're not going to be a national speaker, most of us, I will say, a national speaker, published, grants, all that stuff. It takes a lot of time to get those things and build those relationships. So it takes some patience there as well. So I thought I'd just briefly talk about this concept. So, the goal of this talk is talking about choosing an academic career. And in order to help you make a choice in an academic career, I think you need to know what are the metrics for promotion? What are academic chairs looking for in people that they hire? And I think one of the things they talk about is the three-legged stool, which is teaching, patient care, and research. I mentioned a bicycle, that would be two of those, and a unicycle would be someone who's good at one of those. I can tell you that historically there aren't many triple threats or three-legged stools. I mean, I think we all have to start with one skill and then kind of build the other ones up. So the first one is being good as a clinical educator and being good with patient care. And starting with that in your academic career, and then adding on to that with maybe the scholarship and the research. So kind of the final, I guess, half of this talk, I'm going to talk about ways that if you choose an academic career, you'll be ready to start, and you'll have a CV that you can throw on an academic chair's desk and say, look what I've done. I've established a track record of at least showing that I want to be in academic medicine. And I think by knowing what some of these things are, it'll help you choose an academic career, because I can tell you, if out of the next skills, are you interested in fellowship? Do you do research? Do you like scholarly writing and awareness of the literature? Do you like national involvement? Are you interested in awards or teaching awards? Are you interested in building curricula and teaching? Are you interested in academic niche? Are you not agonized by administrative skills? If those things don't appeal to you at all, then a career in academics may not be for you. So I talked about fellowship. Again, if I'm reflecting on my journey, I didn't do a fellowship, but I certainly at sometimes have some regrets for not doing that. For me, it wasn't kind of in the cards, I guess. But I will definitely say that a fellowship would make you more marketable for an academic career, because you're going to define your academic niche by what you did your fellowship in. So EMRA has a wonderful fellowship guide. They have great resources. So you certainly feel free to look at that stuff. But I will say, think about geography, think about the fellowship type. So some fellowships are certified by the ACGME and you can sit for a board exam. Some are not. Some offer an advanced degree. Some allow you to work extra to support your fellowship and maybe start paying back your loans. There's different lengths. So fellowships in emergency medicine can vary widely. And I'm sure there's plenty of talks and podcasts on fellowship, so I'm not going to spend too much time. This is a list of some of the advanced degrees that you can do. And I will say, I have several partners and know of people nationally that have gotten an advanced degree while working as an emergency physician. So they did, a web-based curricula for a master's in medical education, for example. I know a couple people who have done that. I have a partner who just got an MBA. What I will say to that is this: if you're doing these as a fellow, you have a much reduced academic career and you have a lot more time to do that. So I think it's easier to do as a fellow, frankly. And just if I reflect on my experience, I really kind of cobbled together a fellowship in disaster medicine. So the picture on the left, when I was a resident, we used to work a lot of mass gathering. The picture in the middle is from advanced disaster life support. And the picture on the right is my deployment to Hurricane Harvey. So I had to do a lot of training to be deployable for FEMA. And I did that while I was an attending here. The more efficient way to do that, frankly, would have been to do a disaster medicine fellowship. And a lot of those fellowships come with a master's in public health or an advanced degree. As far as research, if you're really interested in research, it takes a lot of training to be good at that. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that I do have a grant, pretty sizable grant, to look at virtual reality and mass casualty triage. So the short of it is learners have to go into the virtual reality environment in a subway bombing and they have to triage the victims. And the goal here is to teach them how to safely apply a triage algorithm to do the most good for the most patients. It took me a long time to get the background experience and many failed applications before I could get that. The person on the screen is our current research fellow, Katie Buck, and she has an NIH grant that she got as a third-year resident, and she's our current research fellow. And I think what I see when I work with her or see what she's doing, I see somebody who's getting the critical skills to set up what they need for their rest of their career in academics. And so there's more than one way to do this. You don't have to do a fellowship, but a fellowship does give you the skills in a shorter period of time, I would say. So, you hear people talk about, the research or the scholarship hat trick, this would be something that I would highly recommend. So if you're interested in a career in academics, think about doing the local presentation, the regional presentation, the national presentation, and really you have to check the conference, but a lot of conferences you can present in a non-EM conference and then in an EM conference. It just can't be presented at 2 emergency medicine meetings. And then make sure you're taking those presentations to manuscript, because these are how you get your bang for academic buck. And so I would just really, recommend, if you've done a local presentation, think about, is there a grant here? Is there a manuscript here? So, again, just some background, earlier in our career, we were using Second Life, which is like a virtual world, to do an oral examination for emergency medicine residents. And we published a couple papers out of that I think really gave us the groundwork to move into the virtual space for doing this project on mass casualty triage. So when you apply for a grant, you need to establish a track record that you can be successful once you obtain that grant. And I think that was my experience with that. So this is what our virtual world looks like. So the users will go in there, and we're going to do this with medical students, emergency medicine residents, and EMS providers. So more to come on that, but just using that as an example of building towards an academic career. The other thing I would say is if you can publish something and you're a resident or a medical student, it's going to help you with your residency application. It's going to help you get a job. One of the things that I was able to do is I did an academic emergency medicine elective my second year in residency, and I noticed that no one had written up a curriculum. So I wrote up a little thing for the SAM newsletter at the time. So I think there's a lot of ways to get scholarship. Most folks that are on the clinical educator track, most scholarship is going to count in some way towards promotion. And the bottom is a case that I saw in the emergency department of acute necrotizing ulcerative gingivitis. Got permission from the patient, and we published it in the JET EM website. So again, be thinking about scholarship. It's everywhere you're at. I'm sure there's plenty of things that you're doing that you can publish. These are some great outlets for publication. I'm happy to say that during my time as the CDEM president, I worked with CORD to put together the first issue of the CORD Education Supplement. So I think Jeff Love at the time was the president, and we kind of went 50-50 on this issue. And the CORD CDEM Education Supplement has been a great venue. There's other ones that have started since then. So there's plenty of places to put your scholarship to help you get promoted or help you get an academic job or a fellowship or whatever it is that you're looking for. And don't even forget the lay media. So, there's different blogs and things out there that we can write for. And you never know what'll spin out of this. I wrote this article when disaster response apps fail. There was a terrorist event in Nice, France, and they had an app that was supposed to notify people, and it didn't work. And after writing this, there was a lot of kind of media requests, and people who were really interested in this. And it wasn't even something that was published in PubMed. So I would say, you have to take each responsibility or each opportunity as it comes, but sometimes things that aren't directly in PubMed might lead to something that provides you a better opportunity. I try to stay pretty active on Twitter, so I just thought I'd throw a plug out for that. The name of the game is promotion, and this is how you can promote your colleagues and how you can promote what you're doing. So again, we're talking about ways that you can help get your academic career and the ingredients that will help you choose an academic career, because it's the things that we are doing right now. So the next one I'll plug, and I'm going to go for about 5 or so more minutes and then wrap up so we can have some questions if there's any, is really being involved nationally and locally. So I can tell you that I went to every cord and SAM for the first 10 years of my career. And it was a great way to get involved and to get to know people and meet people. Now, because of my involvement in the 4th year of education, I've actually started going to some different meetings. So I go to AAMC. I go to, I'm going to NRMP next week, which is the conference for the people who put on the match. So I don't go to, full disclosure, all these, anymore because there's just too many. But when you go, it's a great way to just show up and volunteer. So one experience I'll give you is I've seen this play out in several occasions. The interest group meets and there's 8 people there and they need somebody to chair the interest group for the next year, and somebody raises their hand. And all of a sudden you're the chair of an interest group of a national organization. And believe it or not, it can actually be that easy where, you are the one that shows up, you're demonstrating interest. And then once you get that, you got to make sure that you work and get it done. So, I'll just talk about my experience with clerkship directors in emergency medicine. And in talking to some of my colleagues, they've had similar experiences. So I graduated from residency in 2007. In 2008, I believe it was the SAM meeting in New Orleans, but it's been a while. I had dinner with one of my former faculty, Dave Manthe, who was about to become the first president of CDEM. And I had started at Ohio State overseeing the boot camp experience for our 4th year medical students. So I was getting more interested in medical student education. And then I had the opportunity to be the track co-chair for the CDEM track that happens at Cord. And I did that for several years, and I was on the program committee for the CDEM track. And that led into, eventually becoming the president of that academy. And I can tell you that a lot of the academies, they have to be more than 100 members, but, just like anything in life, it's 15 to 20% of those people that are doing a lot of the work. So if you find an organization that you really bond with and really resonates with you, I would absolutely encourage you to volunteer and get involved. So that really worked for me. I try to help, now that I've been promoted to professor, I try to help others along the way as much as I can. I'm probably not as good at this as I could be, but what we try to do is if somebody has a publication coming out, they'll say, hey, will you tweet this out for me? Or we may let an organization know. So I was fortunate that my department tweeted out that I would be, helping with this talk today. And, by the fact that there's over 15,000 people on right now, I think you can tell that it really worked. But it really helps to have people in your corner and be someone that can help promote others. Like I said, if you're going to go into a career in academics, you have to like teaching. There are going to be learners around, be it fellows, medical students, emergency medicine residents. These are some of the programs that I've participated in. The Medical Education Research Certificate at Cord. I did that program. I did one called the AAMC Lead Fellowship. And these are year-long courses where you do different modules. Our OSU, the Ohio State, has a faculty teaching scholars program, which I did. I did the Ohio ASEP leadership course. So it helps to do some of these programs. And ASEP and Cord have a teaching fellowship. I have not done that, but I know people who did and said that it's a great experience. So these are all ways that you can improve your teaching skills. And once you get those curricular skills, publish some of the stuff that you're doing. So this is our boot camp course. that we were able to put together and publish. We developed a disaster preparedness curriculum for medical students that we were able to publish. One of the things that I don't get a ton of energy from, but is very important, is administration. But I have partners who have gotten promoted just really based on their administrative skills. So these are people that become hospital CEOs, department chairs, our clinical vice chair for clinical services. So the clinical pieces of this are very important. One of the things you can do is be a chief resident. That helps you learn with scheduling, and for me, I learned a lot about conflict resolution and administrative tasks. So, and then, you know, you're going to develop your academic niche, and this takes a little time. You know, my story was, I was a medical student when 9/11 happened, and I was an emergency medicine resident when Hurricane Katrina happened, and I started developing an interest in disaster response. But at the same time, my parents were teachers, and I always really enjoyed teaching and educating. So, you know, some of the first things I did was I helped at the Chief Resident Forum. You know, I helped with a boot camp course, and then I've been doing more with disaster medicine lately. But it really helps to have something that you can focus your career on, because that's one of the ways that we can get promoted. So as far as the outlook, when it comes to choosing an academic career, these numbers are a little bit old, but they're the ones that I had right in front of me. There's over 230 emergency medicine residency programs. And now the osteopathic programs and the allopathic programs are combined in the match. And so I think there's a lot of access to emergency medicine right now. Research is on the way up. There's over 70 NIH-funded investigators in emergency medicine. There's an Office for Emergency Care Research, which is relatively new. As many of you know, we're a fairly new specialty, you know, starting in the late 60s, early 70s to board certification. And so, you know, we're starting to build our reputation as high-quality educators. And I think some of the things that I've seen on the horizon with the opioid crisis, with firearm safety, with geriatric emergency medicine, those are a lot of areas that we are certainly experts in those fields and can help with those things. So, you know, don't forget your family and wellness. I probably didn't do this great early in my career. I'm starting to get a little bit better at it. So when I work a weekend day, I try to take a day off during the week. I think the flexibility of community practice might be a little better for that, but you have to work more shifts. And so when you get into academics and you maybe get to a place where you're working 13, 10, 8 shifts, then you're gonna have a lot more evenings with your family. And I'm at a great wellness point because of that for me. I mentioned that EMRA has great resources on this. If you're a medical student, CORD has wonderful resources on career planning, advice for the match. I used an article that was a little bit old, but had a lot of the skills in it. SAEM has an academic career guide. I would point you to that as well. And that's all I had. So hopefully there's a couple minutes where I can answer some questions, or I will say before we wrap up that if you're watching this after the fact, my Twitter handle was on the first page, or you could get a hold of CORD, or they can get a hold of me. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And again, just to wrap up, this was kind of my experience in academic medicine. And if you talk to a bunch of different people who work in academic medicine, they'll have different stories. But I think if you follow through with some of these things, you'll have some luck in choosing an academic career.
So thank you so much for that very interesting presentation. I've been in academics for, I guess, 15 years, and I learned stuff from your presentation, so thank you. I love that picture. That VR image is amazing. And you should be really, really excited about that. It looks really cool. If anyone has any questions, the easiest way to do that is on the bottom of your screen. You'll notice if you hover your mouse over it, there's like a ribbon on the bottom and one of the buttons says chat. If you click on that, you can type your questions here and I'll be happy to share them with our speaker. So if I can ask you a question while we're waiting, I think this question comes up quite a bit, which is how easy or hard do you think it is for someone to make the transition between academics and community in both directions? Meaning if you start out in community, how hard is it to get back into academics? And then vice versa, if you start out in academics, how easy or hard is it to transition?
Well, it's a wonderful question. And I think it's going to be provider specific, I would say, for the most part. I will say that one of the things, if we start with the transition from academic to community, when you're working in a place with a lot of learners, I would say one of the things that I've seen atrophy is procedural skills. So I'm fairly fortunate in that I do some of my shifts at our community site where I get to see patients on my own and do procedures on my own. But I think as you progress in academic medicine, if you're working with medical students and residents of all levels, they usually get the first crack at the procedures. So I would say one thing that might be tough in transitioning careers would be keeping up your procedural skills and maybe even your clinical skills. If you're not going in the room and taking the full history physical, doing all the orders, that stuff can atrophy. So that might be something that would be tough to go from, you know, a place where the learners are doing a lot of the work to a place where you're doing all the work. As far as going from the community to academics, there's just a lot more, I think, to academic medicine in terms of teaching. If you're at a place where there's promotion and tenure requirements, you're going to have, you know, are you publishing? Are you presenting? Are you going to conference? Are you helping with the clinical competence committee? Are you core faculty? There's a lot there that might be tough to get used to, but what that person would have as an advantage is good clinical, presumably good clinical skills and experience with seeing a lot of volume. The other downside to that would be there's typically a contrast between what you can make in the community and what you can make in academics. And I will say this, that I know people that work in academics that have been able to take on different roles and things where the gap is actually not that sizable. But, you know, again, there's so much variability in what we do.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the first question from the audience is, any strategies for breaking into markets that are very academically saturated, such as Boston and New York City, other than doing a fellowship?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think if you want to go into academics, building the skills that we talked about, so demonstrating a track record of being able to do scholarship, being able to do some research, presenting nationally, having some maybe teaching awards or evidence of building curricula, I think that can help. I can tell you, though, I've had graduates of our residency program really want to do academics and not be able to get into those markets. One of the tactics that I've seen be successful is residents who will take a community job that maybe is loosely affiliated with that program to get started, to demonstrate a track record, and then try to move into academics. I will say, though, that I think probably the best opportunity to break into those programs would be to do a fellowship at that program. So doing a fellowship in Boston or New York, it would give you a chance to demonstrate your proficiency in whatever you're doing it in. And I think there's probably plenty of places out there that hire their fellows out of fellowship because they're kind of a known commodity. They're filling a role. They already have a role within the group. So, you know, it's a tough question. I think, you know, you could also work in academics elsewhere. So maybe take a job at another academic emergency department, start to build your national reputation. And then if that place has an opening, you can fill that opening. So those would be the two things I would say. And maybe the more I think about it, taking an academic job somewhere else and really doing a good job with your research and whatever you're doing will allow you to break into those markets.
Thank you. So I am actually in New York City. I can just tell you that it seems like this year there are several academic places that are advertising that they have jobs available. So if you're looking for a job for, I guess, soon or this coming academic year, this might not be such a bad year in the New York City area. You may want to take a look at some of the job boards because I have seen some of the academic places advertising. So the next question comes from Matt Steck, and the question is there an aspect of your academic career that you felt least prepared for, that retrospectively you would have better prepared for in residency or early in your career?
Yeah, I would say my ultrasound skills. When I was a resident, we didn't have a fellowship trained ultrasound specific faculty member. And so learning ultrasound was a little bit more of an independent study where you'd show up and you got a textbook and you'd read about it and then you'd scan some people and so my ultrasound skills still lag behind, I would say, some of our fellow faculty. Now, that being said, we have an ultrasound fellowship here. We have, I think, 4 or 5 ultrasound fellowship trained faculty. So it's not hard to be below that level, but I would say that that my training wasn't great and I've had to make up for that. I will also say that most residency programs are going to be better in some things than others. And I got great training where I was at, but if I'm being fully transparent, that would be something that I could have done better. And again, part of it's on me that I could have done better at that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would like to thank Dr. Kaman for such an interesting and exciting presentation. We are certainly excited that you were able to join us today. This presentation is being recorded and it will be available on the CORD website if anybody would like to see it again, or if you know anyone who missed today and would like to watch that presentation, they certainly are able to do so. Thank you all for joining us. A special thank you to Dr. Kaman for your time. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.